All right, hello and welcome back to another tutorial in Maya. Today we are going to look at some textures and texturing. We're going to see how to kind of put some pictures on a cube. Okay, so it's not too complex, and this tutorial's probably been done a million times before. I don't know. But I've never seen a tutorial that kind of explains what you need to be looking for and what the mistakes are that you kind of make with, assigning textures to your UV space here. So anyway, in this scene, I just have the physical sun and sky going. I have a large box, basically just a cube, where I knocked out some faces, just deleted some faces. The sun is coming in here. And I have some portal lights, and there's a tutorial for that. So portal lights are sort of integral in lighting up this, interior type of, area. All right, so nothing too complicated. I put some 2D fluid effects clouds in the sky, and I found this really cool model. All right, this model is the steampunk airship, and it was provided by Urdwolf, Urdwolf, and he's over on Share CG. He makes this model available for free, basically. Thanks, Urdwolf. You're awesome, and he's a very good modeler. So, this is just really cool, and he's got a kind heart and put it up there, so you can download this and play with it. So anyway, very nice model from Urdwolf. And remember, he's got to make a donation button, so go over and show him some love. Download the model, play with it. I don't know, whatever. I'm going to be working with it because it's just really cool. So there you go. Good job, Urdwolf. And also, say thanks to Lester Banks, because Lester's on the internet night and day. He's finding good stuff for your brain. He's got the tutorials in After Effects, Cinema 4D. He combs the web. He finds the good stuff, and he posts it. And he's kind enough to include me a lot of the time. So thank you, Lester. All right, so let's take a look at how this stuff works. Let's maybe come into the scene and start with a common problem, because that's really where all this stuff starts. And we're going to be working with the UV texture editor. So I have this cube selected right here, and you'll notice that it doesn't have the texture like this one does. This is normal. This is kind of what it should look like, although I'm thinking the brick spacing is a little too much here, so I might have to fix that later. But anyway, it's just testing. And so I have a whole bunch of various surfaces textured here that I'm sort of mapping out and just going for, experimentation. So right away, there's something wrong with this, and I can tell that. So, you may want to just open up your texture editor when you start doing this stuff. And let's take a look at the UV texture editor. And the UV texture editor is a little window like this that'll sort of show you the picture in the background, and it'll give you, your shape, or here's our cube. But you can see where this cube really isn't, laid out very well. And this is probably the most common mistake, is that you'll just select a cube and attach an image to it. Well, that doesn't really do the trick in most cases. So really the best way to do this is to sort of select your object, and you can see where weird things are maybe happening, because it's not, this is more rectangular and not cubic. It's not perfectly cubed. So there's a ton of different ways to do this, but I find that an easy way is just to come over and come into automatic mapping and go ahead and hit automatic mapping. And you'll notice that the UVs, sort of switched up there. And that's good. So let's click on your object again and go back into object mode. And I'm going to click on that again. Well, right away you see where, because I automatically mapped this texture onto this surface, that it kind of fell into place a lot better, and now it's looking like the rest of them. And really what we're after is these UV shells right here, and we can do various things with these. So with that in mind, I just wanted to show you that that's probably the most common mistake, where we need to map this correctly so that our geometry looks the same in the UV texture editor as it does sort of over here in the main viewport. So anyway, let's take a look at maybe creating a surface and sort of going through how to work with this UV space over here. So I'm going to, let's find a problem let's find something that might be problematic in here. I have a whole bunch of different textures going on here. And another problem that you'll run into a lot is something that's sort of like this. Maybe I can get a better look at this. You'll have flip-floppy textures. And basically, even though I have automatically mapped this, it's not coming in correctly. So if I come over to my UV texture editor and look in here with my object selected in object mode, my sign is straight, but it seems to be doing something weird here. And that's because we need to assign or sew these UVs together correctly. So if I select this object and just do a right mouse click and say perhaps go into face mode, I want to maybe take a look at this face right here. And as you can see, it's down here, and I'm going to shift click all these, and there's those. But if I come over here and I shift click this surface, you can see where this is starting out on top, and technically it should be on the bottom. All right, so we could correct that in doing this method right now. If I come over here onto my object and go into object mode, I might be able to say go into edge mode and select this edge right here. Okay, and if I just sort of shift click this edge right along like that, you can't really see it on YouTube. Maybe you can, but when you selected that edge, another edge that it corresponds to sort of is chosen at the same time, and that other edge that it would correspond to is, you know, in this quadrant over here. So a lot of times what we're doing is sort of moving and sewing edges together. And in this case, I could come up here into this little icon right here, move and sew the selected edges. You see it giving you the notice there. I'm going to go ahead and just click that and see what happens. Okay, well, I clicked it. It moved those edges. It sewed them together, but now this is upside down. Well, that's cool because there's no problem here. All I need to do really is maybe just come in and go to object mode, select my object, and just, you know, rotate that back around wherever it should be. But you'll notice that we still have the same problem over here on this edge as well. So, you know, in that case, you can't really maybe do it this way. So I'll just go back and we'll put this one back over here. Actually, this might be a good one to just sort of experiment with. I'll go back to there. And actually, I might want to make sure it's zeroed out. It's rotate X. Let's just go to 0 there. Okay, that kind of gives me a good perspective. So let's do this again. I'm going to basically come over here and assign an existing material of, say, like Lambert 1. All right, and that'll just take that texture off. And we'll come over here into the UV texture editor. I'm going to click on this object, and I'm going to go create UVs, and I'm going to do a automatic mapping. Okay, and I'll go back into object mode for a second here, and let's take a closer look at this object. So with this object selected, you can see where it's sort of laid it out the same. Now let's go into face mode and see where these faces are over here first. I'm going to sort of select that face and then select this face. Well, they're kind of wacky. This one's still coming up there and it's going down there. So let's do a move and sew, but let's sort of look at this as how we want it to read. We want to read this left to right. So I'm going to basically have a large face here and then 4 smaller faces and then a large face and 4 smaller faces. And they should fall out that way across this realm. So I'm going to go back into my object mode for a second here. And I'm going to click on this. And a lot of times when you want to move these UVs around, we need to move them out of the way so we can work with them, and then we need to move them back into space. So let's find out which one we need to move first. And you're going to be going back and forth into face mode and edge mode a lot when you're dealing with this stuff. So I'm going to select this face, and I can see where this row that comes down right underneath my UV set, that row is sort of the row I want to start with for my texturing. So I'll go back into object mode and select this object. And now you can see it's in there. Now, there's two ways you can do this. You can right mouse click and go to UV, and then come up and select this little tool called the Move UV Shell tool, and then click on that UV that we know needs to be kind of moved, and maybe put it off to the side for a second. Now, sometimes my computer is sticky. I don't know. Sometimes I have to come over and hit the select button right here, my selection, and select the tool here, and then I can activate it over here. So just be aware of that. Sometimes things get a little crazy, all right? So no need to worry, but you can see where you can move those UVs around into different areas. Now, let's look at this one again over here, and you can see when I highlight that, we're now active on this UV. Well, that's all cool. So let's look at, actually, we want this to be the next space that lines up on the bottom here. So I'm going to come back over onto my object, and now Maya is going to crash on me, okay? So it's going to crash. Usually when I'm using my UV texture editor, sometimes with my screen recording program going on, it goes into it goes into death mode. All right. So this is something that really bugs me. I haven't been able to figure it out, but I'm going to. Okay, so you got to bear with me on this. I'm just going to go ahead and cancel out of that. We'll relaunch Maya here. Yeah, it happens. I don't know why. Sometimes it may have something to do with my screen recording program, but more than likely it has something to do with an internal Maya bug, because this only happens with the UV texture editor. So anyway, I'm going to come back down here. We'll open up that recent file I was doing, and we'll just take it from scratch. Pretty easy to fix. All right, well, got my UV texture editor there. Got the scene. Let's click on this guy. I'm going to bring this back over here and maybe just go back around to this side over here. There we go. And I'm going to select that. And I think for the time being, I'll work on maybe a different cube. So let's just pick something that hasn't been textured yet, like this. And I'm going to just bring it out a little bit, and we'll see what kind of happens with that. We'll bring it out. Okay, so as I have that selected, I now have my UV texture editor open here, and I'm going to sort of minimize this a little bit, and hopefully it won't crash again. Okay, so here we go. We have that selected. Let's come in here and do our automatic mapping. So we're going to go create UVs, go to automatic mapping. We now have those edges. And let's see where this, let's go into face mode or object mode. Let's choose that. Maybe go into face mode for a second. And there it is. So, you know, it's this one right here. So I'm going to maybe start with that just for kicks and grins. So I'm going to sort of select those faces, and I know that that's the UV shell. Well, I'm going to go back into object mode, select the object, come over here, right mouse click, go into UV mode, select my shell tool, and actually move this shell over just a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to move that over, and come back over in here, and we'll see if we can get back here to get one of these back faces. I may have to move it out a little bit more. Sometimes, you know, you're going to, I'll have to go back into object mode for a second. I'm going to move this out. There we go. Now maybe we can work on it. Maybe come in from the side. All right. So there we go. Let's see what we got. Let's get back into face mode for a second. Check that face. Okay, so that was the UV shell that I moved, and it's over here. And let's look and see where this one is. Okay, so this one's right here. So that's cool. What we want to do is we want to take this edge and we want to sew it. We're going to sew these edges together. So go ahead and right mouse click, go into edge mode on your object here and select that top one. And I'm going to sort of do the same to all of those along this line. All right, so these two line up over here. You probably can't see it very well on YouTube, but they line up. So I'm going to go ahead and use my move and sew the selected edges together. All right, and what that did is it joined those edges together and it moved them so that there's no overlapping space. And I think what I'll do is do the same for these down here. I'm going to go ahead and kind of look and see where they're at first. I'm just going to select all of those, and you can see as you select them, they all sort of went up from bottom up, and that's cool. So really, it may be best to sort of put this piece where it belongs and this piece where it belongs. So I might want to just sort of come back over, click on my object. Sometimes your editor will go white like that. Just click on your object again, it'll reactivate it, and I'm going to basically right mouse click UV and come to my shell tool. And technically I know that this is the shell that needs to be sort of moved out of the way for a moment. So I'm going to move it, past these objects. And I'm going to click on this object right here, and I'm going to move it over here. And we'll go ahead and select that edge again. So I'll right mouse click on my object and go back into edge mode. And I'll come down here to the bottom one, and we're going to click. And you see now those two bottom ones line up. And I'm going to do the same thing for that one, and the top one. And now, when I do a move and sew UV, it's going to take these and sew us together onto the seams, so it's pretty much a seamless texture. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So that's cool. And now, technically, if I come over here to this side, if I can get around there, I'll try and select one of these edges, and I'm going to select the one on top of it, and this one on top of there, and this one down there, and they all line up. Everything's all good to go. So that's cool. All right, let's go ahead and just click on the object. I'm going to go ahead and go back into object mode. I'm going to click on that. Well, now I have a problem because these are sort of now moved up here. So I'm going to sort of come around here to my UV shell tool. I'll right mouse click, go to UV, move UV shell, and I'm going to click on that one. Well, it's not really doing anything. And that's going to be another problem that you sort of deal with is what happens when you start moving and sewing stuff. So let's come back into say face. Now let's go to edge mode, and I want to sort of take a closer look at why it's doing something like that, and we're going to find that edge. Seems like there's an edge on the top here or something, so let's just click that and see where we're at here. Alright, so this one is sort of attached there, and let's click these two. That one and that one. Alright, so those are together. And I'm going to click on this one over here, and that one, and that one, and that one. Alright, well, it's attached to this whole top surface. That's why it's moving out of UV space. So in this case, I might want to just go to this mode at the top here. Yeah, let's come up here, and we're going to basically separate the selected UV into one for each connected edge. So if I click on that, it's going to do its thing. But I'm going to come back here and check something. I'm going to go back into UV mode, and I'm going to click my move shell, and I'm going to click this, and yeah, so I'm going to move this over so it's all the way into UV space, because this is what we're going to be putting a picture behind, so we want to know where everything's going. Well, you can see where this has moved, but if I click on this one up here now, I might have to go back into my UV mode. I'm going to click on this, and there it is. So in this case, I might need to go to my selection tool, I might have to hit move UV shell and click on this one. So that's a classic example right there of how sometimes things get a little wacky. At least they do for me. I don't know if they will for you, but I have to come over and use this selection tool to sometimes do this stuff. It's annoying. Okay, so I'm going to bring this UV over and down. It's just the top edge. We're not going to see it in the scene anywhere. It's just sort of buried, so I'm not really too worried about it. But as well, you can see where we have this one down here. So we have one on the bottom that we have to worry about as well. So I'm going to come down here and we'll probably just have to move this. Might have to go back into object mode and grab him, move him up. Let's just put him way up there. Maybe come down here and get in on the bottom. Okay, so now we got to worry about this one. So I'm going to go back and just go into my edge mode. And I'm going to sort of select these edges that are around the perimeter there. And as you can see in the UV texture editor, they're lighting up. And you want to make sure that you just select those edges, that there's nothing else that comes through. So I can pretty much see where, that's what I got. So I'm going to do the same thing to this one. I'm going to sort of make him, 1. So I'm going to separate that. And then I'm going to basically come back over here, and I'm going to go back into object mode. I'm going to click on my object. And in this case, I might just go to my selection tool, hit my move UV shell, and click on this little shell down here and move it back over and up into the UV space. So really, I'm not worried about those. Those aren't getting any kind of image or anything, but technically all of this is. So I'm going to go ahead and move this over, and I want to go back into face mode. I'm going to click on my object here and go into face mode. And I'm just going to sort of look at all my bottom elements right there, and then maybe come in here on the top and do the same as well. Let's see if I can get in here and come up here and just sort of select a few of those. So looks like everything's good to go. All right, perfect. So go ahead and choose your object again and go into object mode and click. Now we have a great UV kind of layout for this this pillar. So the next step is to basically save that as a UV snapshot. And what that does is this just saves this grid so we can take a look at where stuff is going to line up in Photoshop. So you have your choice. You can either choose like 2048 or 1024. Just make sure you stay, in relative terms. I always say the bigger is the better. Like if I set this at 1024 by 1024, that's like small. I mean, like 512 is like bite size, and 1024 by 1024 is medium, and then 2048 by 2048 is sort of, large, and then extra large, when you get up to 4096. So let's look at this for a second. Because this is just a small object in the scene overall, I probably don't need to assign a 4096 type of texture map resolution to it. So I might want to just stay with 2048, or I might even want to do a 1024. Those differences are going to sort of increase your render times, and so that's something to be aware of. So anyway, in this case, I'm going to leave it at 2048. But remember, bigger is always better. The higher resolution, you can always down res, but you can't really up res. All right, so just keep that in mind all the time. So I think what I'll do is stay with the 2048, and this color value is going to be the color value that's assigned to these lines so that we can basically see them in Photoshop. And that's cool. I'm going to leave image format at IFF because that's a great format. Photoshop loves IFF, and I'm going to hit OK. But first, I might want to give this a name, so I'll hit this little browse button up here, and I'm going to save this as UV Snap tutorial or something. UV Snap and tutorial, because I may or may want to change this later, but UV snapshot of the tutorial. And I'm going to basically route this to my desktop so I know where to find that. And I think I might even put a delete here. That tells me that I can delete it if I want. I think I'll save it. I'll just go to the desktop. I'll hit save and I'll hit OK. All right, excellent. Now I'm going to move the texture editor out and we'll minimize Maya here. Let's see, here is my file right there, my UV snap. So let's go into Photoshop real quick. And you'll notice I have a image already that I want to work with, and then we're going to basically put that image on, this wall, and that's cool. So let's do this. Let's go to File and let's open that. Let's open that file, and it's UV Snap Tutorial, UV Snap Tutorial right there. All right, so that's our image. When it comes in, it'll generally have a transparent background. I like to just sort of create a new layer and take that new layer and basically just make it white. So I'll come over here and just sort of paint it white. Let's turn our lines on and maybe move those up. Okay, so now I got my lines on top of my white background, which is cool. You can see kind of where we need to put stuff in. So that's the easiest part. So let's bust off this wall first. And I'm going to put that over here a little bit, and let's just drag it into our composition here. Okay, you can see where at a full resolution, it doesn't really quite fit this space. So I'm either going to have to resize this or maybe double it up or do something strange. In this case, I'm going to sort of keep it. Here's what I'll do. I'll move this down like this. I'll downsize it because really it's just having to fit within this UV space right here. So this looks like a good bottom for the overall post there, or that pillar. So I'll put that down here. And let's see. I'm going to click on this and we'll hit return here. And I'm going to duplicate this layer. So we'll just come over and do a duplicate layer. Hit OK, and I'm going to move that layer up, and I think what I can do is maybe just rotate this by 180 degrees, and there we go. And I might mess around with sort of making this seam look a little better or more realistic in here. So a lot of cases you'll end up doing this. I just go ahead and select both of these layers, and I usually just merge them, do a layer merge with them, and it puts them together. Maybe let's just, for this tutorial, use the quick clone tool here, and maybe just clean up this area right in here and just sort of blend them together, because it's going to wrap around. You're not really going to notice it that much, and so I'll just sort of try and get rid of repeating elements or anything that might be kind of the same. Yeah, so you get the idea. You just want to sort of randomize that a little more, and I might even want to maybe take this hole off of there because that's pretty blatant. So anyway, you get the idea. There we go. Now let's put our Coke sign on here. I'm going to go ahead and let's take a look at that. I'm going to bust this one off, and we'll move it over into the comp. Drop that in there, and it's huge, and that's cool because we're going to downsize it. So let's bring it back down in here somewhere, and we want it to wrap all the way around the wall, or at least most of the way. So I think I'll sort of put that right there, and we might give it a little more size here and cover up that line altogether, so I didn't really have to blend those necessarily. All right, so that's cool. Let's leave it like that. Let's bring this one, but first let's check where everything is kind of blending here. Let's move our lines, they're our original IFF file. Let's move those lines up to the top, and you can see where this starts over here, this red line, and then the other one ends right right here. So I want to take this Coke sign, and I basically want to downsize it and fit it in within that space. All right. So right about there, this one might come in a little bit. Anything that's hanging over the edges isn't going to show up, but anything within these red lines is going to show up. So And that looks pretty cool. I think I might just drop it down a little bit further there, and we'll go with that. I'm not worried about these guys down here, so I'll just leave those off. And in some cases when you're doing, hit return, in some cases when you're doing work with a background layer and UVs, it's maybe best when you're finaled is just to go ahead and make that layer black instead. And there you go. Okay, so we're almost ready. We're going to output this as a bitmap, but before we do that, we want to make sure that we turn these red lines off, and we don't want to see those in the image. So that looks pretty good to me. So let's do this. Let's take this image and come up into File and Save As, and I'm going to put this as Coke bitmap or something like that, or Pillar Coke. That's for Pillar Coke tutorial, or yeah, let's see, Coca-Cola. And I don't want to get this mixed up with stuff I do later, so it's good to have a naming scheme. So anyway, you'll be dealing with a lot of textures and a lot of names and stuff, so it's good to get into a habit of doing something that you'll know what it is. So once you get a name to it, I'm going to go with a bitmap. Make that a bitmap, and it's going to go to my desktop, and I'm going to hit save. And 24-bit's cool, so we'll just leave it at 24-bit. And now we can hide Photoshop, and we can come back into Maya. Let's see, here's my pillar right there, and I like that. We'll come back into Maya, and here it is. So the first thing we want to do is come in here into our Hypershade and grab yourself a Lambert. Get yourself that Lambert, and we're going to assign that bitmap to this material. So I'm going to go ahead and hit my checkerboard, choose that 2D texture file, which is that on my desktop, and it's under Coca-Cola, Pillar Coca-Cola tutorial bitmap, and there it is. So it's Lambert 57. All right, so let's assign that Lambert 57. Go ahead and select your object, right mouse click, come down, assign existing Lambert 57. If all goes well, you should have a really nice textured pillar. All right, so there it is. Let's look at it from all sides. You'll notice where it pretty seamless, comes in all the way around. Yeah. All right, so there you go, and I hope that helps for that. And I'll bring this back down into, let's bring it back down into where it should be. Alright, I'll move that over a bit. See what happens. We'll do a quick render, although nothing is ever quick with rendering. And this is somewhat complicated in terms of its the stuff in here. So I mean, it's gonna be a long render time. Well, not really a long render time, but just about a minute and a half, maybe a little less. A lot of times when you start texturing like this, you can't really optimize your texturing or bake them on. You have to sort of wait until you're done texturing for lots of reasons, but I like to get all mine in there first to know that that's what I want. And it's always best to set your lighting and have almost everything done in the scene before you start texturing, because your lights are going to affect your textures greatly. All right. And you'll also notice that in here, I added a small drop shadow in Photoshop when I made this texture. So that's sort of included in there. Technically, you would probably want to put, a sign like this on its own plane, and have it be part of its, have it look better. And this geometry needs a lot of subdividing and just a little bit of, cracked edges that actually are warped and stuff like that. So, okay, so our render's done. There it is. You can see it. And there was what we had before. And I can see, that I've got my texture on there, and it's looking kind of the way I want it to look. Now, you'll notice that, this texture, if you look in the Hypershade, If you grab your file 46, that's the one I hooked up to there. It comes pre-blurred, and I hate this. It has a quadratic filter applied. So I'm going to want to turn that off because we don't want to blur our images coming in. I don't know why you would do that. And maybe pick linear as the color profile that just balances it out a little better for Maya. And by doing that, keep your eye on this texture right here. I'm going to save this image and we'll do one more render. And you'll see where that cleans it up a lot. I have no idea of why you would want to blur a texture or have a pre-blur on it. It may have something to do with rendering. It may have, I don't know. But it's wrong. Or at least it's weird. All right, so we'll save this image when it's done rendering here. And there's some other stuff going on in this that's wrong. A little bit too much in the cracking here, and this needs its bump map, and depends on where you're looking at the texture, whether it needs like real bump mapping or not. Sometimes you can just create good textures and light, and if it's far away enough in the scene, a bump map won't help at all. All right, so it's almost done. And we're going to see the effects of what this had on this image right here. So I'll go ahead and save that. And let's take a look at the differences between, taking that quadratic filter off. So we'll go, here's where we were at before. Okay, that was before, and here's after. So watch this area as I move back and forth, and hopefully on YouTube you can see this, but big difference. There it is. No filter, filtered. No filter, filtered. And then no filter. So quite a dramatic difference. Clarity. Okay, so this has gone on for way too long, but I hope you get the idea of how to just work with simply sewing some UV edges together and moving your UV shells. All right, so there you go, and I hope you learned something. Have a great weekend and or week or whatever it is. Be a good person all the time without fail. Read a book once in a while. Maybe the owner's manual. All right, so there you go. Thanks for watching.